Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to give folks another moment or two to continue logging on. I'm still seeing more and more participants joining, so we'll give them a few more seconds and then we'll get going. Thank you all for being here. We're very excited to kick off the 2025 Great Decision Speaker Series with our esteemed colleague from UMSL, Haitao Li, who I'll introduce in a moment. The Great Decision Speaker Series is a joint initiative of the World Affairs Council of St. Louis and UMSL Global, the international office at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. The World Affairs Council of St. Louis is a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization founded in 1948. Their mission is to offer programs that promote understanding, engagement, relationship, and leadership in global affairs. And as part of that, they sponsor this series and do a number of other events throughout the year. So they rely heavily on members, people becoming members, and the activity and support of their members. So please consider becoming a member today. With that said, please allow me to introduce Dr. Haitao Li. Dr. Haitao Li is a distinguished professor here at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. He is the founding director for the Laboratory of Advanced Supply Chain Analytics and is an expert in optimizing modeling for supply chains. He received his PhD from the University of Mississippi in 2005. His research projects have been funded by the National Science Foundation, the U.S. Army Research Office, the U.S. Department of Transportation, and many, many other organizations. He holds a number of patents and inventions and has published numerous articles, far more than I could possibly do justice in listing here. So for the sake of time, I will turn it over to Dr. Li, and I look forward to his expertise here on the impacts of U.S. China tariffs and trade war. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for the nice introduction. It's really my pleasure and honor to share with you my views and perspectives on this very timely, complex, and profound topic. Okay, let me start with some basic, right? Yeah, why tariff? So at very high level in general, countries, governments may benefit from imposing tariff in two ways, right? One is the revenue going to increase, right, through imports from other countries with higher tariff. Presumably, we got more revenue, and certainly the other potential benefit, which can be more significant, and many countries have been using that, especially in more recent decades, is to with the purpose of protect their own, right, their own domestic production or industry. So both motivations are valid, right? Sometimes this really depends on, the time of the bigger environment, right? The relative economic status of, the relevant countries. So this is certainly at very high level, right? But, if you think about the consequences of tariff, it's a much more complex question. Okay, what are the consequences of tariffs? Well, immediately we're gonna see higher prices of imported goods, right? Yeah, that's what we're seeing right now. With the new Trump administration, right? Only in a matter of 5-6 weeks into the new administration. And by the way, when Bob approached me, of this opportunity, I have really been trying to follow the news almost every day. Okay, I mean, literally, I have some information to share. Later on in my sharing. Literally, updates are coming every day. Sometimes even within 1 day, right? We heard different updates and news. Yeah, very, very dynamic. But secondly, right? Yeah, with the higher price of imported goods, one would expect reduced import volume, right, from that targeted country. Okay, so these are relatively easy to understand. There is a third potential effect. It's known as terms of trade gain. Now, this potential effect is especially relevant for some large and open economy. In this case, it's us. Okay, the U.S. economy is open and large enough, right, for us to think about this potential effect as well. So what does that mean? It basically means, with a reduced price of goods, right? Yeah. So well, with higher tariff imposed on some other countries, what might happen is the other country might think of ways to address that, okay, to address that, especially when the imposing country is large enough. In this case, think about U.S. market, right? There could be, producers, suppliers in our country, they still want to maintain the entry and share in our U.S. economy. So what they might be doing is actually reduce their price, to still gain the market access to our U.S. economy. So this is actually we are seeing that's been happening. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely get more into that, with a few examples I know. And last but not least, certainly there is the reaction and sometimes retaliation, right, from the other country, okay, the other player. So often we would expect this kind of game dynamics, right? Yeah, one's decision will impact the other's decision, and in this case, we're seeing is, often the other country gonna consider or immediate impose retaliation tariff. All right, so as Stephen shared with you, my expertise and training is in supply chain and optimization modeling, operations research. So why am I interested in this topic? So as I think about this topic, there is actually very profound, effects, right? Yeah, let's say effects and impacts that is related to supply chain. Okay, when you think about tariff, especially the variation of tariff in such a dynamic and short time period. So at very high level, I can think of just imagine a end-to-end supply chain, right? It definitely matters where the tariff is imposed. Okay, whether it is imposed on the upper level of supply chain, that is the raw materials, right, parts, components, or it is directly imposed on the finished goods. Okay, their immediate effect is very different, right? Although one may argue, well, ultimately it's the consumer. Well, I can't disagree with that, but there is certainly immediate difference in their impact of tariff. Okay, I like to point that out first. And now, what can be more profound on that is, when tariff is imposed on certain industry or sectors, right? They're going to be spill off effect, right, across industry and sector. Okay, let me share with you a concrete example. Okay, I'm using this Li, not my last name, by the way. Okay, Li here stands for the one type of critical material that's needed for manufacturing batteries. Okay, so let's look at this example of critical mineral material supply chain, right? Yeah, so you can see at the upper stream we have raw materials production, starting with the mining and extraction, and goes through the midstream, that is where we do processing, raw materials, manufacturing of battery cells, and then going through the downstream, right? Packing, and then serving this inputs, right? Providing such inputs to different industry, okay, different sector. I like this example because it actually not only shows the how the general flow of the critical material supply chain, it also touches, as you can see here, right? The it's going to impact other industry, for example, EV, right? Yeah, the aviation, other manufacturing sectors. Okay, yeah. So this is why it's to me, it's so important to differentiate, right? To think carefully where tariffs are imposed, okay? Yeah, end-to-end supply chain. Of course, you can, we can think about, supply chain framework that like this in many other industries, right? Yeah. But hopefully this gives you a concrete example of the context of my perspective, okay? All right. So, well, as we all know, the China-U.S. relationship has been very, dynamic, right? Especially in recent years, and that relationship certainly impacts how companies, industry are doing business, right, for a long time. So I collected some data, okay, and charts from this very recent study performed by Prof et al. I want to share with you. Okay, yeah. Uh, so this chart, as you can see, okay, it shows a pretty nice picture, right, of the trend of China's share of U.S. imports, back from 1992, right? That's over almost 30 years ago, right? Yeah. So as you can see, where China's imports to U.S. catch up speed, right? It is very much kind of the early 2000s, right? Yeah, for almost over a decade. Okay, yeah, you can see this uptrend, okay, with higher slope. But then you see it got flatter, right? It actually got flatter, around roughly 2015, right? And then you see a down curve, right? Which is very interesting. Everybody knows what's happening there, right? That was a little bit kind of around the COVID-19 pandemic, right? Yes, but I want to draw everybody's attention first on this flattened trend, okay? This flattened trend here since 2015, okay? That actually suggests some of our, the U.S. businesses, in multiple industries are actually, you see that shift, okay, already, yeah, which is not surprising because, well, you can think of with China's rapid growth of China's economy and technology, the China is no longer a country with low-cost labor, right? I mean, we all know that that's perhaps one of the most initial motivation reason why many of the U.S. Businesses, started working with Chinese manufacturer, right, and suppliers from the very beginning. But there was actually a shift. Okay, the income level in China started increasing, so that on one hand kind of make the advantage, let's say the cost advantage, right, less prominent. Okay, well, you can think of other, vicinity countries, right, like Vietnam, countries in South Asia. They are actually kind of catching up, right, with their manufacturing capability. So that kind of explained this flatten, okay, very flat for about 4 or 5 years, right, until what happened? COVID, right? Yeah, COVID hits. I think was sometime the end of 2019, right? Early 2020. So this is where we actually started to see a big drop. Okay, I think with COVID, there are lots of challenges. I mean, the whole society, right? Not only researchers, practitioners, but really the society as a whole, starting to realize, oh, there is something known as supply chain, right? I mean, as a professor, researcher, educator in supply chain, I mean, I wouldn't say, any good words about COVID, right? Yeah, but on the other hand, COVID does ring a bell. Okay, it does help letting people, the society know how important supply chain is because, I mean, almost nowadays, anything that goes wrong, right? You can blame supply chain. Okay, yeah. I mean, we're having some egg shortage right now, right? I think here in St. Louis and in many other places over the country, yeah, it's supply chain related. Well, I think the importance here is we all started to think about supply chain risk, right, and supply chain resilience. There are lots of discussions about reshoring, right, nearshoring, apart from offshore, right? Yeah, so offshore is not necessarily a good strategy. I really like to see that discussion, that thought process start happening. Okay, so that just give you an idea about the context and historical perspective. So this is where we are. Okay, yeah, this is perhaps the most recent data at least I can find, and you can see the percentage of change, right, of U.S. imports from other countries. You see a huge drop, okay, from China. And not surprisingly, right, perhaps you see significant growth from Vietnam, Taiwan, of course, and followed by Canada and Mexico. By the way, I think we all know that sometime actually around last year, okay, 2024, Mexico actually become the largest importers to the U.S. Okay, it actually outpaced China a little bit, okay, by a small margin. Yeah. All right. So if you think about this, right? What does that mean? Are we trying to completely decouple from China? The answer is most likely no. Okay. The frauders I thought did a great job. Okay. I really like this chart. So this chart here shows you a scattered plot, right, of the relationship of those countries, that provide imports, right? Yeah, output imports to China versus, those countries provide exports to the U.S. Okay, so interestingly here, as you can see, the countries that has an increase, right, of export to the U.S. also has lots of, also China has lots of imports from those countries. Okay, that's what this, this scatter chart is showing and this trend line is showing. So what does that mean? That suggests, yes, we are. There is a trend of decoupling. Okay, yeah, for U.S. Between U.S. and China, but we are certainly not going to basically, completely decouple from China. Okay, so what we're seeing here, at least the data is suggesting, is countries who increase their export to the U.S. Often those countries, China is getting more imports from. Okay, yeah. All right. So, like I said, this is a very dynamic topic. I really hate for me to miss something. Okay, I try to be very current. Okay, but this is what we've been seeing, right? Yeah, it's the start of the new administration. It all started with initial 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and actually we all know the starting date. It actually officially started yesterday, right? March the 4th was the starting date. There are lots of discussions, about that. I highlighted, those tariffs directly impact China. Okay, for example, this second one, there was earlier an initial 10% on all imports from China. Okay, announced on February the 4th, and that one, as I understand, was effective immediately. And along the way, as you can see, what happens in February, right? Followed by a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports, okay, into the U.S. And it's supposed to start pretty soon. And more recently, right, on February 18th, there was a 25% tariff on automobiles, supposed to start in about a month. And there might be also talking about higher than 25% tariffs on pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. Okay, yeah, or chips. Although we're not sure when it's going to be effective. And most recently, okay, this is the most recent one I've heard. There was an additional 10% on all imports from China. This was announced just 2 days ago, okay, March the 3rd, and going to be effective immediately. Yeah. There are lots of dynamics. The potential impact is going to be huge. And we all know what about China's reaction, right? Yeah. Let me start with from the government side. So China already announced several retaliation tariffs. For example, 15% tariff on U.S. imports of coal and liquid petroleum gas. Okay, 10% on U.S. imports of crude oil, agricultural equipments, and automobiles. And what they also have done, as we all probably know, is they have been tightening up the exports of critical minerals, right? Especially the so-called rare earth minerals, okay, now to the U.S. And the last one, okay, the last bullet point you are seeing here, I'm showing. This one was just out yesterday. Okay, I actually copy paste that from an official source. So China is trying to impose 15% more tariff on poultry, wheat, and cotton imports from the U.S., and 10% more tariffs on sorghum, soybean, pork, beef, seafood, fruits, and vegetables and dairy products. So as you can see, the current retaliation tariff from China are mostly imposed on food and agricultural products. Okay, yeah, but many of you probably see those numbers, right? I'm not sure how many of you have noticed. There's another note. Okay, so China, what they also determined to do is they are not going to increase any of the parts originally manufactured in the U.S. Isn't that interesting? Right. So this to me, is kind of in line with what I shared at the beginning. Okay, I think they are doing a careful job, right, on at least differentiating, right, where they are imposing tariffs. Okay, so and they made it clear, okay, at least so far, they're not going to increase the tariff on parts, okay, on parts. Some, those parts that's needed in the supply chain, presumably originally manufactured in the U.S. Okay, yeah, that's what we know. All right. How about the private sector? Well, in the private sector, like I, kind of alluded earlier, the reaction actually started way earlier. Okay, I don't think, the business industry just started reacting. It was already a while ago. Okay, yeah. So industry, the private sector has been in China, has been reshoring their supply chain long time ago. Okay, basically what they have been doing is moving production to third-party countries, okay, especially Vietnam and other emerging economies. Okay, definitely, that's for sure. We saw the numbers earlier, right? And of course, some of you may know, right? What can be troubling here is, some of the companies might be, taking a shortcut, right? Yeah, they are trying to change the country of origin through transshipment through third-party country. This, from legal perspective, this potentially can be a violation of international trade. Okay, so there is a specific definition of, what is the legitimate way, right, for one manufacturer to change the country of origin. In this case, Chinese manufacturer would like to change the country of origin to some other third country, right, where they can avoid, right, the tariff imposed to China directly, but there is a specific requirement. Okay, I actually look into that, law, right? It has to be significant differentiation and difference, right, in the nature in the characteristic of the province, okay? Certainly not simply transshipment, okay? So simple transshipment does not qualify, significant transformation of the goods by, to the point it's legitimate to change the country of origin. I think this is perhaps an issue the leadership here, right? Yeah, our administration probably also noticed as well. And I'd like also to share a little bit about my understanding of some of our country's reshoring needs and efforts, right? What are the critical industries, right? Yeah, we are seeing some potential need for protection. Okay, yeah. So I want to start with pharmaceutical and generic drug sector. Okay, yeah. This is a well-known sector that we are relying a lot on third country, supply of those key raw materials. Okay, we are looking at API. API stands for active pharmaceutical ingredients, along with other key starting materials, right? All are essential to manufacture the generic drug. We are having a significant challenge, okay, a threat, right, of national health. Just look at these numbers, right? Yeah, 75 of COVID-related medicine and 83% of top 100 generic drugs. There is no U.S. manufacturing. Okay, yeah, we have been outsourcing all of those, from other country to other country. And what is also alerting is, up to 97% of most prescribed antiviral antibiotics has no U.S. source. Okay, yeah, this is why we're not only talking, right? We are seeing some concrete actions, including here regionally in St. Louis region. We have this huge, significant academia industry collaboration on reshoring API manufacturing. Okay, where AMSO and along with WashU are part of the team, right, participating in this. The second industry that's needs attention is critical minerals. Okay, yeah. So the fact is, U.S. operates less than 10% of the world's critical minerals supply chain, and like we shared earlier, this definitely touches other industries, okay, such as electric vehicle sector, right? And I also want to mention this, right? This CHIP Act, right, was proposed several years earlier, right, by the Biden administration, with the goal of bringing in semiconductor manufacturing back. Although there is some debate right now. Okay, yeah. Again, we're seeing that, just yesterday. All right. So I want to use last few minutes, okay, of from my perspective, what I see, what is missing, okay, yeah, in the whole picture, to tackle this very complex and profound question, right? Yeah, I mean, to both academia and practitioners, and certainly policymakers. I think most of the existing approach, right, studies use a pure economics approach, right? Great, right? That can be focusing on trade, markets. Well, certainly there is a lack of perspective and methodology from the supply chain perspective, okay? Which I do see, opportunities there. And to me and our supply chain analytics program here at AMSO, we share that interest and burden, right? Yeah, so definitely this is something, we'd like to work with you, okay? Many of you from industry and policymakers to see what we can help, right? And specifically, I see what is really needed is some evidence-based or data-driven decision support, especially for policymakers, okay, in this case. And specifically, right, I think of two fronts, right? Yeah, to me, I'm curious, how can we, or even possible, right, to quantify the impacts of tariffs or subsidies, right, on the other hand, on the total supply chain costs, okay? Yeah, that's a typical question that many people ask. What is the impact, right, ultimately? How can we quantify it, okay? And I want to go a step further, right? Can we even help the administration to, do a better job, right? that is, is it possible, or how can we optimally determine how much and where in an end-to-end supply chain to impose tariff? Okay, and to me, this definitely call for very innovative research approaches, paradigms, especially interdisciplinary methodologies that integrate knowledge and methods from economics, supply chain, and the use of data and analytics. All right. So I'm going to stop here. I'd love to hear, your comments, feedbacks, and any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Li, for that insightful presentation and timely communication. I have no doubt it has been incredibly difficult to keep up with emerging developments. It seems like they are updated, like you said, daily or multiple times a day. While the audience is getting ready to type in some questions, please, as was just posted in the chat, please use the Q&A feature within Zoom for your questions. It'll help us keep those organized. I'll be moderating those and passing those on. But while we're doing that, I do have a couple of questions that you may be able to at least take a stab at. So it's like most of the discussion around the motivation for tariffs has been on one hand to reduce the deficit and generate more incomes, and on the other hand to reinvigorate American manufacturing. And I wonder, from a supply chain perspective, do you feel like we have the capacity to handle all of the domestic capacity to handle all of the manufacturing that we are trying to bring back to the U.S.?
That's a great question, Stephen. Thank you. I think we certainly see the need, right? There are some industries, some sectors, the lack of U.S.-based manufacturing is actually imposing a threat in some of the areas that touches our people's life. But then there is a question we even have the capacity. I think it's a profound question that goes beyond an answer of yes or no. It has a lot to do with industry. I think this is a very much industry-specific question. And in general, whenever we are missing the manufacturing infrastructure, right? So by infrastructure, I'm talking about manufacturing technology, not only technology, but the specific equipment, the land, the facility, right? So we all know, talking about that CHIP Act, right? We just shared briefly earlier. We actually had to invest billions of dollars to build gigantic facilities, to mitigate, right, to fill the gap of infrastructure. I think for some industry sectors, this means significant initial investment. Okay, yeah. But to me, I'm usually optimistic. I think given the scale and capacity of our economy, right? Not only on the science and technology side, but also on the vision and what we can do collectively. I think it's definitely possible, but the level of challenges and barriers is going to vary by industry and sector.
Yeah, you mentioned the technology, the infrastructure and equipment. I was also kind of curious about just the industrial labor capacity. I mean, we have an aging population. We have fewer teenagers and high school graduates every year. Presumably
Exactly.
some of these manufacturing jobs you might not need a high school diploma or a college degree for, but then in advanced manufacturing like semiconductors, I have to imagine you probably need some level of expertise to work in those factories as well.
Absolutely. That's an excellent point. This is why, all these initiatives, right? Yeah, we are talking about reshoring, bringing manufacturing back. That definitely also calls for, efforts on the education side. Yeah, this country needs significant amount of workforce, right? In terms of both capacity and capability, right? Train them with the right skill, right? Yeah, as you said, the skill can be heterogeneous, right? Not all of these jobs require, undergraduate degree or master or PhD. Uh, some of these, what I'm saying is the skill sets may have a very wide spectrum, right? Yeah, you mentioned, we mentioned the manufacturing. Another example is I've been working on is on the farming and farming and food sector, right? A lot of the opportunities on farming and agriculture, right, is a great area that the educational institutions can do a better job reaching out to high school students, right? Yeah, get them into, this area early in the stage, and and that will definitely help with a bigger initiative of, at the industry and sector level. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We've got some questions coming in from the audience now, so I'll stop abusing my privileges as a moderator and turn to the audience. James Cummings asks, is it U.S. companies that are going directly to Vietnam, or is this more from, I guess, the other side, Chinese investors and companies going to Vietnam, or a little bit of both?
Great question. I believe it's perhaps a little of both, right? So certainly from China side, we're seeing many companies are actually have been doing that for many years. I don't know how many of you heard a recent story on NPR. I actually just heard that, I believe 2, 3 days ago. Okay, there was a very interesting interview on NPR in the morning, where they interviewed one businessman in China. Actually, he was sharing, what they have been doing with the increase of U.S. tariff on China years back. Okay, so he was talking about the 10% increase in the first Trump administration. Okay, back 4 or 5 years ago, and he said with that increase, they were able to adjust really well by shifting production to Vietnam. Okay, but they did say this time it's gonna be more challenging because you know with these past years the prices are all going on, right? Lots of inflation worldwide, so it gonna cause additional challenge. So but that's an interesting question. I think from the U.S. side, U.S. manufacturers also have been doing that, as far as I know, for sure. Okay, so we all know that big U.S. Manufacturers such as Apple, right? They have been, reshoring, right? Yeah, moving, adjusting their manufacturing sites. Working with other countries like India is one example. I don't know whether that worked out very well, but I guess in general it's yes. Okay, I think actually, thank you for that question. I think what's most relevant to us, right, to this country is us, right? How much we can do about Chinese manufacturers is their decision, but I think it's really the right time for us, right? By us, I'm talking about U.S. manufacturers, okay? U.S. industries. How can we do a better job, redesign, right? Most likely we need to redesign our supply chain, right? So that it is, let's say, robust, okay? Resilient, right? Hedging against any potential supply disruptions, especially those that are critical to our, national interest, right? But at the same time, I do want to mention efficiency, because efficiency got to be there. Okay, you can manufacture generic drugs where with significant higher price, right, to our consumer. That not gonna work. So to us, okay, I think for me, my colleagues here at AMSO supply chain analytics department, my faculty, our students, there's big challenge and also opportunity, right, for us to come up with state-of-the-art decision support solutions, right, data-driven, to help U.S. industries, companies to do a good job in this transitional time, okay? Redesign supply chain to achieve multiple performance metrics, right? Resilience, sustainability, at the same time, maintaining and achieving efficiency.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Another question from the audience. China and other trade surplus nations often reinvest their surplus into the US, and that seems to finance our deficit. So it seems like insourcing can be a big risk because we then have to insource our purchase of US treasuries. So what are your thoughts on sort of the inherent risks in insourcing to domestic buyers, especially of US treasuries? And thank you very much.
Well, that's a little beyond my training and knowledge. I'm not sure what exactly you are talking about the reinvesting, of the surplus of other countries back to us. Are you talking about some, foreign investment, right, in the U.S. in manufacturing and some of the technology area? Okay. Okay. Well, I think that's positive. I definitely think because from supply chain perspective, when you think about efficiency, right? What matters for efficiency are essentially two elements, right? One is cost, one is time. See, time matters, okay? Anything you can source closer, potentially you have that advantage. But sometimes you don't get those, right? So that's exactly where the challenge is. Okay. Yeah. Nearshoring is great because, presumably you can get what you need quicker, but is that cost effective, right? Do we have to pay more? So I think yeah, I think that's probably a positive side, right? Yeah, for other countries who have surplus. Um, uh, but I think there's still some topics, some issues we can look into, from the supply chain perspective. I'm not sure if I answer your question well. Yeah.
If not, we can always come back to it.
Okay.
Another question from the audience. Can you expand on the supply chain issues for pharmaceuticals? Are we currently at risk for more shortages of medications than we're already experiencing? Is this likely to get worse with tariffs and trade war, or is this a sign of progress?
I think, yeah, thank you for the question. I think this is a long existing and well-known issue for our country. Okay, yeah, the shortage of drugs, generic drugs especially. I think the prominence, right, the sensitivity of this issue becomes more relevant, more prominent with the COVID. Okay, we all see how. I mean, everybody remember what happened during COVID. At some point of time, we don't have masks. We don't have medical masks, right? We're out of masks. That's just shows, yeah, a big economy, big country like U.S., right? As advanced as we are, in many areas, we are potentially, facing that threats. And one thing I do know, because as I mentioned earlier, also along with many institutions and industry, or certainly companies in this region, right? We are moving forward with API reshoring efforts. Okay, yeah, so it is happening. So what we're seeing is actually that drug shortage list, right? Yeah, from FDA, they update this, occasionally. It's actually keep growing. Okay, I mean, so that certainly suggests I don't know how much worse we are getting into, but I can probably it's probably safe for me to say this issue has not been alleviated. Okay, it does require lots of efforts, and I'm excited. We are part of that, and my contribution in that. So our contribution here is really from the supply chain perspective, right? To help drug manufacturers, along with some of the most advanced manufacturing technology in pharmaceutical industry, right? How can we address the needs from the supply chain and operations perspective? Yeah, I think that there are lots of opportunities there. Sometimes challenges, but could also be opportunities. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So one of the things that I think is frequently discussed, and I think President Trump mentioned it in his address last night to Congress, about saving the U.S. automobile industry. And I noticed in your presentation, the only time it was mentioned was specifically talking about rare earth minerals in electric vehicles. Or primarily, maybe not exclusively, but primarily
Right.
seemed to be the primary way that automobile manufacturing was going to be
Yeah.
affected.
Right.
Am I missing something, or is that about it? I'm curious.
Well, yeah. Thank you. Great question. Well, there is certainly a lot we can talk about EV, right? That industry itself. Okay, yeah, I'll be happy to share what I know and what I see. I mean, certainly, this is one of the staple industries, right? That China has been really doing great. Okay, you see. I mean, I saw it. Okay, I saw it last year. I had the opportunity going back last year, back to China, and there are so many EV manufacturers, and that market has so developed. There is a wide range of product lines, with all these different configurations, right? Very fancy interior design. I mean, those designs. I mean, when I saw it, wow, this is like a luxury car, right? So this is an industry that I'm glad, Stephen, you mentioned it. China has really doing very well, and we also see that some news from Europe, right? They started seeing the threats, right? Especially Germany. Okay, so we're not surprising to see that Europe, right, the EU, and Germany started being sensitive about protecting their automobile industry. I think this is definitely one industry that falls under I mean, potentially special attention for us, right? Yeah, how because here's another factor. Okay, yeah, we the focus of today's sharing is on tariff. We haven't talked too much about subsidy. Okay, so I don't want to get too much into that, but that's almost like the other. I mean, the other instrument, right? The other two the government can play, but we know that some of the industry in China, the government did put in lots of investment. Okay, in this case, I would say perhaps in certainly in the EV industry and other industries like drones. Okay, the UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, that's just another industry. China has been really putting lots of investment. So this is actually creates some sort of unfairness. Okay, if we in this country does not factor in these consideration, I mean, it's still it's a threat. Okay, I do think we need to be sensitive. Okay, to realize the reality, right? Yeah, really looking at the specifics of a unique industry, right? Which industry we're talking about, which sector we're talking about, and better. Okay, looking into the supply chain, right? Are we talking about the end products, right? Or it's raw materials, right? Or it's the parts in between. I think all these can be examined, and I certainly see lots of opportunities there.
Great, thank you. We've got time for maybe a couple more questions, so audience, feel free to continue to put some in. So Keith Wilmer just put an excellent question in In addition to the tariffs mentioned, we also imposed a 100% tariff on EVs made in China and high tariffs on solar panels. He asks, are we using tariffs to prevent us moving toward a clean air economy?
Yeah, thank you, Keith, yeah, for this thoughtful question. Um, I mean, when you think about solar panel, right? I mean, this can be a equipment, right? That will have that will impact other industry and other sector. Okay, this is to me another example where we can ask the question, is this the best way we can do, right? Yeah. Especially when you think about where solar panel can be used, right? Can be used for our other either manufacturing sector or, food and agriculture, I imagine, which might need solar panels. So, and, and and also the sourcing part, right? Yeah. How do you manufacture solar panel? I think that's just another example. You know, we can perhaps look more detailed into, right? And examine the comparative advantages of all these potential suppliers, manufacturers, domestic as well as externally, and better design the supply chain.
Great. Thank you so much for that answer. So we are starting to run a little bit low on time. So Dr. Li, why don't I give you an opportunity here? Any sort of last words, closing thoughts, great reasons for optimism moving forward, anything else like that?
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Stephen, and thank you everybody uh, for your participation, in this uh, in, in this panel. I I really want to add, we are certainly at a time, with lots of dynamics, okay, lots of uncertainty. I think that uncertainty sometimes create further challenge. Okay, anything we're talking about here, right? Um, when you add that with some uncertainty, it makes things even worse. Okay, yeah, I mean, so I I think we touched many of the, lots of the good thoughts and points today. I just want to add, I'm hoping the leadership, the administration, uh, can can really be open. Okay, yeah, talk to experts. We have lots of talents, experts in this country, right? From both academia and industry, to look at these issues, topics together and collectively seek solutions that best benefit our country. Um, so specifically from my perspective, I think bringing in supply chain and operations management into this picture can really open the door for lots of interesting research questions, right? For academia, that's great. But I also see a lot of these potential questions, right? If we are able to address them well, the solutions out of it can be very fruitful, can be impactful, that not industry can use, companies can use, but also it has the potential to provide more evidence-based decision support for our policymakers.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And thank you again to all of our audience for being here. Dr. Li, thank you for your thoughtful engagement with the Q&A and for your excellent presentation. It was an absolute pleasure. This was a fantastic kickoff to the 2025 Great Decision Speaker Series. For those of you who are returnees to the series, there is a slight change in the way we schedule these. Rather than do these every other week throughout the spring, we're going to continue to do these once a month. And so they'll last a little bit longer and not be quite so condensed. So please be on the lookout for calendar invites and registration invites in the future. Thank you all again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Once again, these events are co-sponsored by the World Affairs Council of St. Louis, a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that relies on your membership and your participation to continue putting on great events like this, as well as being co-sponsored by UMSL Global, the International Affairs Office at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Thank you all for being here, and have a great rest of your week, and I hope to see you next time.
Thank you so much.